In order to fully understand the medical practices and the similarities between North African and Southern African medical practices, we have to compare them to other nations. Mainly, we shall compare it to the East and Europeans. Now, let's start with a big one. The medical practices of the Middle East and of the Europeans, a lot of it was taken from Egyptian customs, and therefore it will be the same or similar. An example of this is Hippocrates and Galen, who took the idea of the four humors and ran with it. Now, in Egypt, there's way more than four, but this is what they ran with, and it has to do with cleansing the body. This is a custom that is very popular within African traditions.
For a long time, much of what we knew about ancient Egyptian medicine came from the writings of Greek physicians and historians, who visited the country around 500 BCE, a time that was as distant from the start of the First Dynasty 5,000 years ago as it is from today. The Greek historian Herodotus, often referred to as the father of history, visited Egypt and described the Egyptian people as among the healthiest in the world. He said they purged themselves every month for 3 days successively, seeking to preserve health by emetics and clysters.
Now, this is an important part of the video. When we talk about cleansing in Africa, we are not talking about cleaning the body after disease. In fact, most of African traditions make it seem like the body is constantly diseased and you have to cleanse it all the time. So in other words, some people wake up every week and throw up at least once a week in order to cleanse the body of impurities. And of course, there's enemas, which are done in regular intervals. There's bloodletting, which is also done in regular intervals. There's getting rid of black bile, which is called nyongo in Bantu cultures. And there's other things like urinating, taking certain serums, then urinating. These traditions are seen all over Africa. But not only that, it's about balancing the body. This is a little different than Eastern medicine, where even though the body is healing itself, it still is about getting treatment when sick. Whereas in African traditions, obviously they wouldn't term it this way, but in African traditions, it's about keeping the body healthy by constantly purging yourself. And that's why it's called cleansing, because it's like washing your body from head to toe. You wash in Africa, you don't just wash the outside of your body, you wash your internals. And the way to do that is by getting rid of fluids. This is where we get into the Romans and the Greeks, which took this and ran with it, which is the humors, where you have to cleanse the body on the inside regularly, but they didn't do it regularly. They did it for medical purposes, like, oh, you have an ailment, do bloodletting. Oh, you have this, purge. Hey, you have this, do that. But in Africa and in Egypt, you see here how Herodotus says they purge every month for 3 days straight. This is the similarity.
Hello and welcome to Sangoma Society. My name is Uhani Wagamakwakwa. Today we have a special topic. Everybody's been asking about this on social media, and I guess it's just that time of the year. Everybody wants to get off to a clean start, so we're all cleansing, we're all, wanting to just get in alignment, get in order, and the one thing that seems to be a universal challenge is ukuphalaza, purging. Now, it just so happens to be one of my favorite things to do. It is unmatched in how effective it is as something that can cleanse and balance. I hadn't encountered Upalaza until I began in Dwaso. And then I had to do it every single day. And I was just like, how am I going to get this right? The whys, because I know my first thought when I was told Uguti Kwamele Palaze was, oh my God, I really don't want to develop an eating disorder.
So you heard it there. Some people have to do it every single day, every day when they wake up, which, of course, like she rightly says, you don't want to develop an eating disorder. And I know people personally in real life who do it every day. Some people do it once a week, some people do it once every 3 days. But this is the health course of African purging. This is different than the Ayurvedic purging, the purging that you find in India, which is a medical practice to remove certain imbalances. And it too does involve other things besides purging, but let's talk about the purging part first. The problem with it is it's only done a couple times a year, maybe once or twice a year. And more than that, it's depends on what ails you, and it depends on your personal dosha. Your dosha being your, let's call it life force, how your energy lines up with nature. In Africa, it's a catch all. Nobody's dosha is different than anybody. Everybody's got the same problems. You just have to do this every day or every so often, or you're going to be unaligned.
We're going to be talking about cleansing, really, cleansing and the different ways that Ayurveda thinks about that.
Because you need to prepare the body.
So you don't just rock up.
You just don't rock up.
Okay.
Yeah. And the preparation is done by giving in medicated fat, whether it is ghee or oil. It is dependent on the constitution type and the disease type. Normally it is ghee that is used, medicated ghee, in an increasing quantity, that is from 30 mils to about 150 mils or more. The dose is decided initially by understanding the digestive capacities of a person.
Right.
And based on that, we give the ghee in the dose that until the person passes the ghee through his stools and develops an aversion, total aversion towards ghee, you saturate the body with
Oh wow!
ghee.
So this goes on before you even start.
Before you even
so
start.
how long might that?
It takes about 5 days time in order to
5,
preparation.
okay.
And then you are subjected to external massage and a steam bath so that your body is totally saturated with the medicated fat. A massage and steam baths, and then on the 8th day we subject the person for purgation. He comes in the morning at about 8 o'clock on an empty stomach,
Right.
and medications are given so that he purges out. The purge takes place until he finishes purging the mucous membrane out. So it's like stripping of the entire intestines of its
Okay.
mucous membrane and throwing it out. After that, we tell the person to be on a particular diet. It is rice soup.
Very physical during that time. I mean, it
No.
sounds like it's quite dramatic for
No,
the body.
it is a dramatic change for the body, so you should be resting your body as much as possible because the body is undergoing a lot of change
Right.
at that time.
Right. And so is this something that you would suggest or is suggested that people do like on a regular basis once a year if they don't actually know there's anything wrong with them? Or is it only when you think, oh, you know, I'm having trouble digesting my food or I'm having this sort of thing?
Yeah. Stuart, it's like we clean the house every day.
Right.
Yeah. And then when it's Christmas time or Easter time, you will go to every nook and corner
give it a good old
give
scrub.
it a good old
Yeah.
scrub. Yeah, it's the same way for the body. Yeah, every day you clean the body by washing it externally and using medications or something else to help
Yeah.
it. But once a year, you need to go through this cleanse so that the entire body is cleaned up to maintain health. Ayurveda first talks about maintaining health rather than treating the disease.
Though the cleaning of the body is something that you do at a regular basis in Ayurvedic health, it's done through other means like drinking certain foods, diets, and stuff like that. Only once a year or twice a year do you purge unless you need it more than a couple times because you have particular diseases. Whereas in Africa and in Egypt, it is more of a specifically targeted thing.
Why we call it cleansing, right? Okay, it's cleansing. Like it's kind of misleading because it only suggests uguti you are cleansed on the outside. No, cleansing happens on the inside first and foremost. You cannot cleanse a person outside only. You have to cleanse the inside.
Unlike the Ayurvedic style of this, there's a little bit of a difference in that there is a balancing of different fluids. Here's an example of one that's trying to balance out fluids in order to fix someone's external problem. When thou examinest a person with a hardness in the left side, he has feet that he cannot walk with. Then say thou, he has dug sandbags and lifted sand. Prepare for him the remedy that is mentioned before: fruit, amseed, elderberries, and susa chips. Cook into one with oil, one and honey, a little, and let the patient eat for 4 days. Unlike the external problem, the remedy seems not to be a diet change, but a complete purging. For example, when thou examinest a person who is ill in the abdomen, all his limbs are heavy, like a person who goes to lie down. Lay thy hand on his abdomen. If thou findest that his abdomen is swollen and that it comes and goes under thy fingers, they say thou, the fault lies in the digestion of his food. At first, do not let him eat. Prepare a radical purge for him. Refuse of beer, dissolve in flat beer. Afterwards, let him go and eat his bread. If thou examinest him after this has come to pass, and thou findest the small of his back warm and his body cool, then thou say, the fault in the emptying of the bowels has cleared up. Let him guard his mouth against everything hot. And you can see here, it's trying to balance, like, oh, don't allow this into the body, make sure that's outside the body. In a female ritual, they say, hey, don't make bleeding, don't cut the person because that's going to cause problems. It's because there's a balance going on and you don't want to introduce things and you don't want to take away things. Here's another different disease, and you can see that purging is a common trend here. Rub the finger of a woman therein and put it to all her limbs against her sufferings. With one more extract from the woman's section we may pass on. When thou examinest a woman who has lived many years without menstruation, having appeared, she vomits something like foam, and her body is as though a fire were under it. But she recovers after the vomiting. Then say thou to her, this is a rising of blood to the womb. So soon as she has spoken the magic formula and has had coitus, make thou for her berries, caraway, incense, ua grain. Put cow's milk to the fire with thou taula, add milk thereto, and let her take for 4 days. But medicine is all encompassing in ancient Egypt and Africa in general. For example, when we talk about certain things that have to do with emotions and feelings and general disposition, in ancient Egypt, they start talking about how certain parts of the body are responsible for people's behavior and why their disposition is a certain way. This is the main part that was copied by Hippocrates and Galen. It says heart and cold circulatory system. Afterwards, they cause all sorts of disease to arise therein, being mixed with blood. There are 4 vessels to the intestines and to the spleen, which likewise convey moisture and air. There are 2 vessels to the bladder, which convey the urine. There are 4 vessels, which end in the rectum. They give and bring forth in it moisture and air. Afterwards, they turn towards the rectum, each vessel to the right and left side, right down to the feet, mixing itself with the excrement. When the heart is sad, behold, it is the moroseness of the heart, of the vessel of the heart, are closed up in so far as they are not recognizable under thy hand. They grow full of air and water. When the heart feels an aversion, behold, it is the bitterness of the heart, because of inflammation in the anus. Thou findest it big, and something forms itself in his abdomen as in his eye. When his heart spreads out, behold, the vessel of the heart are with excrement. When any kind of Dehert disease enters the left eye and comes forth from the navel, behold, it is the breath from the hallowed hand of the priest that is allowed by the heart to enter his vessel. Fire of every kind is locked up in his flesh. His heart is sick thereof, because the fire comes forth, and the vessel of his heart absolutely deny him their service. When their clothes weigh them down, behold, it is the Dehert disease. When his Dehert disease breaks out, behold, it is dangerous. When the heart is sick, behold, there is an oppression of the heart, or it is an overflow of blood which arises in the heart. It falls down and approaches his diaphragm, while his heart feels an aversion. When the mass disease is in the heart, behold, there is a contraction of the chest. His heart has in its place blood from the anus, which protrudes a little because of a disease. It is a fever of the heart. If his heart quietens down a little under the disease, he will eat, but only fastidiously. When the heart consumes itself, behold, it is the accumulation of blood in the heart. When there is mass disease of the heart because of the uxedo, behold, his heart is small in the side of the belly. The exudo falls upon his heart. He is art sick. He is mast sick. When there is weakness as the result of old age, behold, it is the exudo at his heart. When there is a rising of the heart, behold, it lifts itself at the left breast. It lifts itself on its fat. It flies forth from its place. Its layers of fat are on the left side, so that they collect in his shoulders. When the Dehert disease of his heart appears frequently, behold, his heart swims and sinks downwards, and is not in its place. When his heart is in the right place, the fat of the heart is on the left side. It neither rises upwards nor falls down. It remains soundly in place. There is so much more that I could read, but there's no point. Let's just talk about it right now. So you can see that emotion and physical body is seen as one thing. I'll give an example. In Bantu cultures, if you have a small heart, it doesn't mean that you're evil or whatever. If you have a small heart, it usually means you don't want to do things. You are sanguine. You have a repulsion of doing activities. If you have a big heart, usually it means that you are easy to anger. You're very jovial. You're very out there trying to play games and stuff like that.